All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt, and with me today is my esteemed colleague. You know him as Dr. D&D. It's Kirk from PhDnD. And we are going to do a little continuation of our world building discussion panel from BrigadeCon. Both Kirk and I really enjoyed doing that. We both really like world building. It's one of kind of our favorite aspects of the DMing process. So we thought it might be kind of cool to do a semi-regular live hangout and talk about world building, and we kind of switch off who hosted it. So I'll host it this time. Next time it'll be over on the PhDnD channel, and we'll kind of reach both audiences there, and yeah, it'll be pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to it. We are going to open up by just kind of talking about what we're working on right now with world building, where our worlds are at, because we're both kind of in that process. And we've also got some questions that we're going to be answering. And if you have a question for us pertaining to world building or, hell, dungeon mastering in general, go ahead and leave it in the comments, and we'll try to get to it. So I think we're going to go for about an hour or so. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Kirk. Kirk, what are you working on right now with your campaign setting? What part of the process are you in? What's going on?
So I'm working on, well, I've got my current setting where I'm running a game, and that's my older one, and there's not a lot left to do there. It's towards the end of the campaign, so everybody's just kind of, the players are pretty much in charge now of everything.
Yeah, it's sort of on autopilot at this point.
Yeah, exactly. The one that I'm working on, I just started, so I do a weird process. You can build, you have people who build out and people that build, the bigger picture, and then they scope down to the details. Yeah. Well, I'm kind of like zooming in and out a lot. Yeah. I go both ways with it. So I started with like the big history. I've got like a 4-page thing of like the really deep history with it.
Yeah.
But now I've zoomed into, I've got like 20 or 25 towns, just like names and concepts.
Awesome.
So now I've zoomed into where it's all going to start, the starting town for the campaign, and just building out from there. So like I always do the rule of 3, so I've got, 3 organizations in that town, at least 3 really important people, and then from there, 3 interesting locations around there, and then I just kind of that with each of the towns or cities kind of in a slower, process.
Right.
But I know that the campaign's starting, and it's called Destiny's Point, so that's what I'm building out from right now.
Cool.
With everything, so zoomed way in on that. But that's where that's at. I put it all on like Obsidian Portal, and I've got a lot in like Google Docs as well. So just slowly, I consider it done when it's on Obsidian Portal. It's kind of like I've got the Google Docs for it, and that's the working stuff. And then when I have it up, then I consider, okay, I've done that. Now I can, move on to something else. So.
Once it's on Obsidian Portal, you're not allowed to mess with it anymore. That's you done futzing with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Got at least most of what I want there. So that's what I'm doing, is just working kind of on the towns and cities and people within them now. So.
Awesome.
How about yours?
Yeah, I'm sort of in a similar place right now, but I'm in this weird sort of like I've got a few different worlds that I'm working on right now. The one that I'm focused on at the moment is Aeronoth, which is the world that the Provokers are in right now. And that is a setting that I've had forever, and it's one of those, like, whenever I need just like generic fantasy, I kind of just pull it out, and it's just kind of like my like go-to, like, I don't really have anything set in stone there sort of world. But all of a sudden I'm compelled to sort of take all of the campaigns that I've had there and sort of make them work within the grand timeline of the world, and kind of put important people and places in there and actually map it out for once. Because I always say, well, it's a different region of Aeronoth, and so I'm sort of trying to put all these regions together, like the Kingdom of Karn from my Sundered Throne campaign. I'm like, okay, where is that in relation to where the Provokers are right now? And so that's been kind of fun, and it's like you were saying, where you're zooming out and in. Because it's
Hmm.
like I get hung up on stuff, and I'm like typing up 4 pages about some country that's like 5,000 miles away from where the provokers are. It's like, okay, they're not gonna get there anytime soon. I
Yeah.
don't need to worry about that. So, but so I'm just trying to focus in right now and really sort of develop the area that they're in. Aside from the few locations that we have so far. So, and I'll go ahead and I'll share this awesome map that a viewer really graciously offered to do for me. His name is John Pintar. He's been a long time viewer. He's left a lot of comments on my videos. So I'll go ahead and pull up that map and show you guys, and then I will go ahead and plug his DeviantArt page because he does commissions on these maps, I believe. So let me go ahead and screen share. And that is the beautiful map that John came up with.
Wow.
He used my crappy like hexographer map as a baseline and just kind of ran with it. I was expecting it to look better than my hexographer map. I had no idea that it was going to look like, I was telling Kirk before we went live, it looks like Middle Earth, man. I mean, you could
It
open up a
does.
Lord of the Rings book, and that would be, the map on the front page. I mean, I didn't even notice this until I was looking at it today, but he actually has a fold on the map, like it's been folded up in someone's adventuring pack
Oh,
or
he
something.
does.
And I was geeking out over that a little bit. So, but it was kind of cool because as he was working on the map, he was kind of asking me about areas that I hadn't mapped out, like what's beyond Falhast and what's over here next to Shadevale and what's down here. And so I kind of forced me to flush out the rest of this area, these western Southlands that they're in right now. And so that's pretty cool. So now I'm really excited for them to go to Bloodhoof Steppe, which is where the centaurs are, and the idea of the Sonogeist Desert, which is this big, dead wasteland with lots of undead in it and stuff. So, yeah, I'm super psyched about that map. I'm just over the moon about it, and John did such a great job on it. So let me
Yeah,
ask.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I could not believe it. So his DeviantArt page is JUREP88 at deviantart.com. I will go ahead and put that in a comment on this video, so if you're watching, you can refresh your comments and you will see that. But yeah, man, did an awesome job, and really gracious for him to offer to do that. He told me that he'll sometimes offer to do maps for free because he wants to try out a new technique, or he wants to kind of work on something. So yeah, I thought
That's a
that
way
was
to do it.
awesome. So yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, that's an
So
awesome map.
yeah, I'm really geeking out about it. So I'm pretty excited to have that for the Provokers games. I can pull that up whenever we're going to a new place and stuff like that. And yeah, it's gonna be really cool. The next step is to try and get some art commissioned of the party. I think will be the next logical step. I think that would be cool to
Yeah.
have too. So, um, so I think we'll go ahead and go to the questions here. Um, but before we go to the questions, so I've never used Obsidian Portal, Kirk, and I know you're a fan of it. Um, like, what are the pros and cons of using something like Obsidian Portal? I know it's fairly intuitive. I've almost used it a few times, but I always stop because I go, are the players really going to utilize this, or am I just going to be,
Yeah.
is it going to be in a vacuum here? So what do you like about Obsidian Portal?
I'll see if I can screen share what I do with it because there's a
Yeah, that'd be
lot of
great.
ways. There's a lot of ways to use it. So,
Right.
I mean, I've seen guys, I don't know anything about like coding, websites or anything,
Yeah.
and I've seen some guys on here that make this look insane.
Yeah,
Like,
I've seen a few Obsidian portals that look like straight up like they built a website. It's insane how
yeah,
much they've tinkered with it. So,
I saw like a modern one that had like, the main page was like a smartphone, and then
oh
you literally
yeah.
like clicked on like apps to like go into like things in the world. I was like,
Oh
how in the
wow.
world do you do
Yeah,
that?
that's crazy.
But the biggest con with it is what you dead.
Oh, you cut out there for a second.
Okay, yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So the biggest con is that there are going to be players who do not look at it at all.
Right.
And you can kind of tell though what type of player they are if they're going to, because I
Right.
even have some who really don't get into it, but then they'll go through weird phases where, I mean, like 2 years into our longest running campaign, one of them was like scouring through it for an entire weekend. Like he just all of a sudden decided, and I get all these text messages and phone calls like, "Hey, what's this? What's this?" And he was actually building things on it and like adding to it with his
Oh,
character.
wow.
So that was kind of cool. But yeah, a lot of them won't look through it, but some of them, the ones who are really invested, I think, can gain a lot from it. So this is kind of like the main history that I was working on, like the zooming out, if you will.
Right.
So just put a couple pictures because that keeps them focused. A giant wall of text is not a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So we got like the different ages
Oh, cool.
with a brief description, and then you can click on them. So let's go to. So you can create, wiki pages.
Right. Yeah, it's essentially like a wiki. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can click on that if I've edited that, and then go into actually more detail. Like this is like about the Dawn War, which is in like 4th edition was a big thing.
Right.
And you can this is something new that I never realized. You can embed like music from like YouTube or SoundCloud.
Oh.
And so at a certain point, like I put that so they can click play and get a little background music to
Oh,
whatever they're
cool.
reading.
Okay. Yeah.
But then you can see this is the part I like, is you can share all that stuff that the players have access to, but then you have the private stuff
Right.
for your own notes. And then if you have like their membership, I think it's called Ascendant, you can share certain details with certain players.
Okay.
So you can say the GM can see this and this certain player, or
Right.
these two, players.
Right.
But I just like it for mostly organization.
Yeah, it seems really nice being able to have everything sort of be on its own page like that.
Yeah, it's like I said, a lot of people won't use it, but it's the same as having all those Google Docs that they're not going to look at.
Right.
I use it mostly for me.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the membership costs. I backed their Kickstarter, so I got a bunch of membership time with that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it allows you to put, more maps than just like one or two. It allows you to do some other features. It's worth a try if you like to world build. If you're not that
Yeah.
type of DM, I can't see how it would be worth the time,
Yeah.
honestly.
Right. Yeah, and I have looked at the membership, and I mean I think it's like between $5 and $10 a month. I think it might even be cheaper
Yeah.
than that. So it's not bad.
Yeah. And they do very well with like support.
Okay.
Like mine was gonna come around, I think, and auto renew itself, like the membership or whatever, and I did not want them to because I don't need those features until I start this campaign. So I emailed him and I was like, don't auto renew that. I need like in 2 months I will, because that's when I'll need that stuff. And
Right.
within, I think 24 hours, they get back to you. They can fix things on their end really easily
Okay.
if you
Cool.
have issues. So for me, it works really well. You can have the characters, you can link to character pages and all that.
Right.
And I do have players that like it. So if you even have one who will read through it occasionally, it's probably worth it just to organize there so they can look through it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
But yeah,
I've
the
kind
biggest,
of been waffling back and forth on whether or not I want to do anything like that with any of my campaign worlds, but
yeah, it's something just to try, even just behind the scenes, like do the free version and
right.
try building like a smaller area of your campaign just to see if you like how it organizes things.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I might end up giving that a try, and it'd be cool too especially for like an online campaign. If you have people watching that are interested in the world too, it'd be cool for them to be able to go and like read more about the player characters and NPCs.
Yeah, that's true.
And stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I think that adds an even deeper element to it, where it's people are getting use out of it even outside of the group. So
Yeah, that is a very good point. Yeah, audience could look at it. They could even see like if you have your players and the provokers create their own characters and write up their own thing. Yeah,
yeah,
audience could go on and look at what they wrote.
yeah, that would actually be cool. I might
That's a
think
good
about
point.
doing that. So because I think I'm going to do a video series about the lore of my world, but it'd be cool to have something in writing too. So
Yeah,
all right. Cool. Well, thanks for going over that. I appreciate it. I've never really given it a deep look. I've just kind of on the surface looked at it. So,
yeah.
Okay. So we got quite a few questions. People have been asking questions while we've been yakking away here. So the first question we got is from Tyler Thompson, and he asks if we have any software that we use to create our maps, or any that we've used in the past that we would recommend. I don't have a go-to software for maps. I've tried Campaign Cartographer, which Campaign Cartographer is like learning Photoshop. Like, you really have to give it time and effort to figure it out.
Yeah, it really is.
Because I spent a good few weeks on it, and I was like, you know what? Like, why don't I just use Photoshop? It's essentially the same. Like, I could do the same stuff with Photoshop as I can do with Campaign Cartographer, but I know how to use Photoshop. So I ended up just using Photoshop to make a few maps, and I mean that's pretty time consuming as well. But
Yeah.
I have actually been on the hunt for map software. I like Hexographer for quick and dirty maps, but I just kickstarted Otherworld Mapper, and I think that might be my software, just based on the videos they've been showing.
Is that the really intuitive one we were talking about, I think?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
You just it has like terrain brushes, like you brush on mountains or brush on rivers. That's what I need, man, because I had this software for a while that was actually an advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It was a CD-ROM that had the AD&D rules on it, and it had mapping software on it, and it came with one of the the starter sets that they released in the 90s for second edition. And it had the best mapping software on it. It was like how has no one else duplicated this? Like, this is 20 years old, and it's the best mapping software I've ever used. And it was the same deal where it was like you brush on the rivers or you brush on the mountains, and there were little objects that you could drop in that were like the towns and the cities and stuff. And so Otherworld Mapper looks kind of similar to that. So, but other than that, I don't have a go-to software aside from like pencil and paper, which I like to do from time to time. So, and I know you like to draw your maps, Kirk. But do you have any software that you would recommend?
No, I'm interested in the one you talked about. I missed the Kickstarter for that one, but I've seen the videos and it looks really good. I'm like you, where without the Photoshop thing, I can't do Photoshop. But if I'm not drawing it, I need something very easy.
Yeah.
I've done Campaign Cartographer, and it's really good, but it takes forever to learn.
Yeah.
And I got all the way into it and was making a cool map, and then like the rivers messed everything up, and so I just gave up. I was like, I put so much time into it, and it like ruined my map.
Yeah.
And so I backed World Spinner.
Yes, I backed World Spinner as well. Yeah.
So I'm waiting on seeing that, but I think that's less of straight up map making software and more of actually like generating a world.
Yeah, it seems like it's
like
more of a world generator than a map maker. Yeah, which is it's
so
cool in and of itself. It gives you a map, I think, but it's not like a go in and draw your own map type thing.
Yeah, exactly. So as far as software, I don't personally use any. You can use Paint.
Yeah,
that's probably
honestly.
And I don't even do that, but that would be the first thing I would probably jump on if I didn't have anything else, just because it's easiest. You just draw what you want to draw.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't require any severe knowledge of graphic software to use. So
exactly. So I'm not a good person to recommend software. Campaign Cartographer, like I said, is really good, It's just if you've got to spend the time to learn it and
Exactly.
perfect it.
And I've seen some guys that make maps with campaign cartographer that's just like wow, and like I've looked at
Yeah.
tutorials and stuff, but I feel like it's like that. Have you ever seen that meme that's like how to draw an owl, and it's like step 1, draw some circles, and it has like 3 circles, and it's like step 2, draw the rest of the owl, and it's like just everything else.
Yeah.
Like I feel
Yeah.
like when
All
I
of
watch
it.
tutorials, it's kind of like that. It's like I don't know where how they got from there to there with campaign cartographers. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, the only advice I could give you is like Kirk said, like paint is great, or hexographer is really easy to use if you're just looking for something quick and dirty. Otherwise, unfortunately, at this point, you're gonna have to put some time and or money or both into a piece of software to get good maps. But I'm very very hopeful about Otherworld Mapper. I hope that's as awesome as I think it's gonna be. So
Yeah.
and then we have a question here that is not about world building, so we will come back to it if we have time at the end. We're going to try to focus on the world building stuff. So this next question is from Fontrodden, who asks, what kinds of details do you like to slip in to give your world more life? This is kind of an open-ended question. I don't have an answer immediately off the top of my head. What do you think, Kirk? Like details that make your world more lifelike.
Okay, and I'm gonna push this book again. I do this all the time, but Elminster's Forgotten Realms is if I'm trying to put more detail in on things that, and I think in more detail to like bring it to life is things that don't necessarily have to be there to play the game, but just make it more interesting and more fun. And I literally just open this like this has like drinks.
Yeah, I was gonna
go
say
into, like,
food, man.
yeah, food and drinks, and then like come up with a certain kind of, I don't know, like coffee or beer, and then just do a really quick history on it. It
Yeah.
started in this brewery, with dwarves in this area, and this is the reason it got to here. Just real
Yes.
short. It doesn't have to be, you can write one sentence, but all of a sudden now you've got beer or whatever that the players can interact with. They can order it. You could even put like a mechanical effect with it,
Yeah.
some super hallucination or something.
Yeah. Lets you detect
so-
magic. It's so hallucinatory.
Yeah, so that another fun way to do it is like so I take like Skyrim for anybody that's played that. You can pick up books throughout the world.
Yeah.
And they're just really short. Well, most of them. Some of them are pretty lengthy, but just do that, come up with a title for a book that the players can come across and write maybe a paragraph or two of some interesting, it can either be like a fictional story that somebody wrote or an actual history of some event or whatever.
Yeah.
It can lead to adventure hooks or whatever, but those are just fun things that they can find and read later and try to figure out. So that's another thing I do. What else? That's what I think of when I think of the finer, like smaller details to bring it to life.
Like as soon as I kicked it over to you, I was like, oh, you know what, food. And I was thinking about the immersion tables that you came out with a little while ago, where you could roll for like the tavern name and like also like the main dish that they have at the tavern. And that's something that it's so easy to say like, oh, the barmaid brings you a mead or an ale or something, but it's another thing to say, she sets this mug on the table and she says, careful, this is, dragon's piss. It's so strong it'll burn your throat or something like that, and the dwarves brew this stuff, and all of a sudden there's something that is really tangible and something that's just like mundane in the world. That sort of helps bring it to life a little bit more. So yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah, food's like it's almost like the cheating way.
Yeah,
to add detail and bring it to life.
Food brings everyone together, man. Everybody loves food, so you can always. That's a really easy way to sort of get their attention or get them to like relate to something. If it's like oh, they bring you out a plate of food. It's like no, they bring you out a plate of like fried potatoes and some crusty bread with a stew, and you're just like, okay, all right, I'm into it now, yeah.
See, we've gotten into like, my group's actually gotten to the point where we'll go into like a tavern, and they'll be like, okay, we want to order food,
Mhm.
And I use those tables a lot in the beginning, and then I'll just space them off, and I'll say, okay, it's 2 gold or whatever, and they'll be like, do we get a roll on the food table or not? And so I'm like, oh, okay, hang on. So I'll get the table out, and they actually like rolling themselves to see what like the special is, or what they order.
Do they
And
do
so
they
I'm all
ask
for it.
the barmaid what she would recommend?
Yeah, exactly.
What on your menu would you recommend for today?
And then we roll, 4d20. Okay, I
Yeah.
recommend this. And then there's
That's
like a
awesome,
section for
dude.
like sides, and they're like, "Do we get a side with it?" Yeah, roll a d12.
This is actually a barbecue place, so you get like a meat and two sides at this
Yeah, you
tavern.
pick
So
pick 2 sides. But
that's
that's
awesome,
happened,
dude.
yeah. So
That's
those
awesome.
those are a fun thing to use.
Yeah, I would say like just in general, like giving a little bit more attention and detail to the mundane things of the world. Not everything is a magical weapon or a giant war. Sometimes it's like a certain type of plant. Or like we're talking about food, or Kirk's talking about books. Your world has to have like myths and legends and stories of its own. And having books and folk heroes and things like that will kind of elevate it to make it more tangible and not realistic, but it'll feel more lived in and lifelike.
Absolutely.
All right, got another question here from Chaotic Good DM, who asks, "Do you guys ever build more than one concept at a time?" Like how WotC has Eberron, Dark Sun, Forgotten Realms, Spelljammer, and all the rest. Do you guys find that a concept which focuses on a single solid premise works as a world, or do you include all concepts into a single world like Paizo's Galarian? Um, yeah, I mean, I already mentioned that I'm working on a few different things. Guilty of working on 3 or 4 campaigns and 3 or 4 settings at a time. I can't keep my attention on one thing at a time for very long. Um, and it's funny that you mentioned Galarian because Galarian is cool, but I'm also not a huge fan of Galarian, and I don't think I would ever want to play in it just because it is like a kitchen sink type setting where they have literally thrown everything into it. I mean, they just opened up a region in the Iron Gods adventure path that has like laser guns and chainsaw swords and stuff like that, and it's like this
Whoa.
this this region coexists with the medieval Europe setting of Galarian, and it's just like
Yeah.
that doesn't gel with me, man. I'm all for putting sci-fi in your D&D, but I draw the line at putting chainsaw swords into your medieval European setting, But
Yeah.
yeah, what do you think about that, Kirk? Do you rather have like one kind of conceptual world, or do you kind of throw everything in?
Um, I'll be very careful answering this one. I've done both, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, if you use like a single concept, so like the Wizards of the Coast examples, they tend to turn out very well overall. The people who don't like one, it's usually because they don't like that single concept.
Right.
So they'll just pass it over, and there's obviously something else for them. People who don't like Eberron will like Forgotten Realms more often than not,
Right.
or vice versa. And so those are a good way, especially if you're a lot newer, I think,
Yeah.
at like world building or DMing. But I almost find it like a fun challenge to try and mix not all of them, never like the chainsaw, all that, but taking like 2 or 3 of them and seeing how they could work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seeing how you could take, like my new setting is pretty much a melting pot, but I'm trying to like refine it and pull out all the stuff that doesn't need to be there in the end.
Yeah.
Like how much of World of Warcraft can I fit in without overdoing it? Or
Right.
how much of like Game of Thrones style, the darker, the political, how much of that can I fit in there without overdoing it? So
Right.
at this point for me it's almost like a part of the challenge to take 2 or 3 and mix them together. But that single concept and expanding on that is a very good piece of advice
Yeah.
for a lot of things in world building. For like locations, that's like the main thing I do. For like a city or like a dungeon, I pick one big concept and build everything around that.
Right. Right.
So, so yeah, it does work for worlds. That's where I would start. But then eventually you get to the point where, yeah, you want to try and mix and match, but
Exactly. Yeah.
it's more
Um,
dangerous to do that.
Exactly, and I I would say like I mean every good or interesting world has that little twist to it where it's like well it's like medieval Europe but there's magic or well it's like Forgotten Realms but there's guns stuff like that like
Yeah,
you always try to put a little spin on something and I think any good fantasy setting should have that those little pieces of other genres. I've said a lot that I'm a big fan of putting sci-fi into fantasy and um, stuff like that. But you always kind of want to, you're baking a cake. You don't want to put too much or too little of any one ingredient in there. You want it to come out just right. Um,
yeah,
and like you were saying, it's kind of a fun challenge to make that work, and then you sort of just take out what doesn't work. You trim the fat, so to speak. And that's the
exactly.
problem. I think that's the problem with Galarian is that they don't trim the fat. Like all of these things just kind of coexist, and they don't really know when to stop. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
and I think the single concept worlds. Like I'll use Dark Sun as an example. Dark Sun is badass. I love Dark Sun. I would never want to play in a campaign there that took place for like years. Like because I
yeah,
would just get kind of tired of it. It's like, "Oh, we're running out of water and we don't have metal and I'm dying because it's so hot." That was fun, for the first 3 months, but now I want to do
yeah,
something else, you know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah,
And that the same could be said of like Spelljammer too, where it's like, okay, I'm kind of tired of like swashbuckling in space. I'd like to put my feet on the ground now. Um, those are campaign worlds that I would use for like short mini campaigns or even one shots, where it's like we're gonna
yeah.
do like 3 sessions in Dark Sun, you guys, or like the Greek inspired campaign setting that I'm working on, Estia. I would never want to run a long campaign there, but I would totally run like a 4 or 5 session campaign there. I think that would be about perfect. So
Yeah,
um, I think not every campaign setting is made to run long campaigns in. You know what I mean? So
exactly. That's a good way to put it.
yeah. Whereas the ones like Forgotten Realms or Eberron, they've kind of got more variety, more going on, and you can kind of stay there for a while, I feel like. So,
Yeah.
um, all right. Awesome. Next question is from Dice Roller Josh, who asks, what are some good ways to make my players more engaged in the world I build? Well, we kind of answered that a little bit. And more specifically, what are some good plot hooks, NPC concepts, terrain, dungeons, cities, etc., that I could implement in my game that will achieve this goal? Um, so, I mean, getting the players engaged, Kirk and I already talked about, kind of the mundane things, food and books and, stuff like that. Things that you don't necessarily, not the big picture stuff, but the little details. Um, but specifically, what are some good plot hooks, NPC concepts, terrain, dungeon, cities? How about Kirk and I each give you something to use in your world? That would be kind of fun.
There we go.
So we can either give them a plot hook or an NPC concept. I'll go ahead and say a dungeon. Build a dungeon that is let's see here, that is inside a giant tree. Like do like a Dooku tree from Legend of Zelda. So the players come upon this gigantic tree, and they have to kind of work their way up to the top inside of this tree. And it's so massive that there's rooms and chambers and hallways, and they have to keep going up and up and up. And I think that would be kind of a cool, sort of unique alternative to your under the ground, masonry dungeon. So you could have it be like elven themed or like Feywild themed. You could play around with different like vermin and forest creatures and fey creatures. So I think that would be kind of fun. But what have you got for Dice Roller Josh, Kirk?
Um, okay, so I do a series called NPC All Stars, which is
Yes.
exactly like the NPC template you can use. So you just pick any character from like books, television, movies, whatever,
Right.
and then take that and move it into your world. So I'm trying to just pick something really random here. Um, okay, so your NPC concept is The Rock from WWE. Dwayne Johnson, whatever. So you've got this physical specimen. I mean, just like a very impressive, huge. He can be like a hero, but at the same time, maybe he is more like a movie star. Not movies in the world, but maybe he's like an entertainer more than anything. And
Yeah.
so he does. Maybe he actually does like professional wrestling, like staged combat, um, in the local town or whatever. And no one really knows. Could he put up a fight? In the dungeon that Matt just gave, or the example like the tree. And so maybe he tags along, and you either find out that he's very capable, of handling himself, or maybe you find out he's just an entertainer
Yeah.
in the end. But it's as simple as that. Yeah, just grab something completely random, be like, okay,
Yeah.
how will I make it work?
I
Um,
yeah, as soon as you start talking about what I was thinking of was like this guy hires you because he got hired to do a job and
oh
he's
yes,
not actually up to the task. You know what I mean? Like they're
yeah,
like, "Oh, Dwayne Johnson, you're so amazing. You're the greatest fighter in the world. We need you to go and clear out this dungeon." And he's like, "Yes, I will totally do that." And then he goes and hires the party and is like, "You guys need to keep this hush hush. I'm supposed to be doing this."
exactly. And he pays you very well, because he's famous and he's got all that.
Exactly.
But do
Yeah.
you expose him or not?
Exactly. I love it, dude. There we go. That's there. You got a D&D session right there. Bam. There. Done. We did that for free too. We didn't even charge for it. So
There we go. Next time we will.
exactly. Next time we're gonna be charging by the session for D&D sessions. So all right. Tabletop Terrors. Tim Kearney is here. He's got a question for us. He says, macro building or micro building? In other words, do you start with a large map and then fill in the details, or do you start with a small location like a town or city and then expand around it? And then he has another comment that says, I think Kirk just answered my question like right at the beginning of the video. But yeah, this is definitely a topic that comes up a lot. I'm going to go ahead and let Kirk lead off on this one if he has any more to add to it, just from a micro or macro perspective.
Okay, so I always start with after the brainstorming and coming up with whatever type of world you want. I almost always do the big map next. Um, so I would probably start macro map wise,
Mm-hmm.
because I like to know either the boundaries. I always leave a little bit off the map too, like the land goes off this corner,
Yeah,
so it's not just. I did the one island once, and I didn't like that as much.
yeah,
Um, but anyways, I like to at least know the majority of the region before I zoom in and start like micro building out. Kind of like to have that outer frame, if you will. Um,
yeah,
and because map making is one of my favorite parts, so I like to get to the map very quickly. That's the other part.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
like I said, though, yeah, start out here, maybe even do like the history or a general history to have and to use when you do that micro building. But then I almost always zoom into the little areas and like water ripples. You hit
Yeah,
the one spot and it just ripples out, and that's pretty much how the rest of it comes about. So I start with the macro and then zoom in and do each of the little areas.
yeah. See, I actually like that. It's kind of like it's a blended technique where you have the big map, and then you zoom in and you do the micro as the session begins. Like what you're talking about at the beginning, where you know where the players are starting out, and so you're starting to really build up that area that they're in, because
Hmm.
that it gives you the best of both worlds. You have a context for where the players start, like within the world. Like you know that the elves are up here, and there's a kingdom of men over here. You can refer to these places, and you know where they are in the grand scheme of things. But you don't lose out on that discovery aspect where the players can go off in another direction, and you go, "Oh, I don't know what's over there. Let's go find out." That sort of thing. Um, so I think that's really smart to do that, where you do the brainstorm and then you kind of have a general idea of what the world as a whole looks like, and then you do the zoom in and you do the micro building. So I like that.
Yeah.
That is smart. All right. Beamers RQ. I don't know. Beamers RQ says, "Hi guys, do you ever make a setting with different physics than ours?" Um, well, in my Spelljammer game, gravity's all weird because they use arcane magic to create gravity on the ships, but it can, if you disable like the gravity generator, like gravity gets weird. Like I had a combat encounter where these orcs like boarded the ship and they like disabled the gravity generator, and so everyone shot upwards and they were fighting in the rigging and the sails and stuff of the Spelljammer ship, because gravity, they disabled it but gravity was still on, but it was reversed, so everyone started flying upwards, and if they didn't grab onto something, they would have shot, their momentum would have shot them into space, outside of the like atmospheric field of the spelljamming ship. So I try to, in terms of like physics, I try to keep stuff mostly grounded in reality, just so that if they do run into something that is like out of this world crazy, it's more meaningful. So if they come upon a floating island or something like that, it's like, whoa, because physics are generally, the same as in our world. But yeah, what about you, Kirk? Do you ever do anything different with physics or anything like that?
No, it's kind of like yours, where if I do it, it's on a smaller scale, like it's one thing that stands out, like a floating island, or if I have like a river that runs like up a mountain, it's like one river. It's not like all rivers
Right.
flow the wrong way, or and
Yeah.
then there's something special, some special reason why. I don't understand real life physics well enough to create my own.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like if you really start messing with it, there could be a lot of inconsistencies that people
Yes.
smarter than me would start picking out, and
Yeah.
I could just sit there and I'd be like, you know, oh well.
Yeah.
I have a campaign with really high level players though, and a lot of their abilities mess with physics big time.
Yeah.
I've got a wizard who like he'll send people up in the air. I don't remember what it's called, like anti-gravity or something.
Oh, geez.
And
Yeah.
every time they fail, or yeah, if they fail their saving throw, they go another 10 feet up.
Oh, man.
And
So they
so
just
when
start floating.
they eventually save, it's not a good thing either, because then they fall that
They
entire
fall,
distance.
right? Yeah.
And so that's like the furthest we really get. But yeah, I'm too scared to mess with it too much.
Yeah, I'm the same way and I'm like that with like map making and geography too, where I kind of keep things to how I know things work. Like I'll look at like real world maps and look at how like mountain ranges work and how rivers flow and stuff like that, because I'm not I'm not smart enough to figure out how those things would be
Yeah,
different, and so it's like I just,
exactly.
I want to keep it as simple as possible for me, so I don't have to sit there and like bluff my way, like to my players, like try and like save face and just like, well, it's like that because of this, and I don't want to. I also
Yeah.
don't want to be like, well, it's magic, because
Yeah,
that's the
because magic.
yeah, exactly, because magic. So, but yeah, I tend to steer clear of the making it too crazy in terms of physics. So. Okay, we got a question from Sean Murphy who asks, oh, okay, so we kind of already answered this. What do you guys use to make a world map if you use a map? I'm having trouble creating one for my world, and this world will be used for the next year, so it's really got to stick with the players. And then he says, also, Matt, do you know where I can score a decent deal on Pathfinder pawns? Amazon. As for your world map question, we kind of already answered this before. Kirk had the great recommendation of using MS Paint, which is, easy to use, and you can, make a decent looking map for your players, at least an outline of the world and where the towns and the mountains and stuff are. But also look at like Hexographer, or if you have, a little money to spend, you can always try and commission somebody to do the map for you. There's a lot of really talented map makers out there, so. And then this next question, I'm definitely going to let Kirk answer this one first. Cody Kopp asks, how do you guys incorporate Dragonborn, Tieflings, and Gnomes? Why do you include Gnomes with Dragonborn and Tiefling, man? Everyone's hating on Gnomes. I can't believe it. Dragonborn, tieflings, and gnomes into your worlds. I like how it's not like Dragonborn, tiefling, and half orc. It's literally like Dragonborn, tiefling, and gnome.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kirk. So how do you incorporate the less common races into your world?
I like gnomes for one. So
Yes, thank you,
if that puts
thank
me in
you.
main man like at a crossroads, then that's where we are. um, certain gnomes. So the way I
Yes,
use gnomes is more like the tinkerer type, or like the more technologically advanced. They don't necessarily have like machines and things, but they've experimented more with like how to get magic to, you know, make life easier and all that.
right.
Um, I don't like the forest gnomes, like garden gnomes and those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't like those. But so I use gnomes as like the tinkerers, and then I use tiefling and dragonborn the way that fourth edition introduced them. We used kind of the same lore in our world. So Io was like the dragon god and got really cocky and tried to fight a primordial and got cut in half. And then
Yeah.
you have Bahamut, Tiamat, and then all these dragons come about, and basically the spawn of dragons or whatever, whether they used humans or however, we don't have the details necessarily worked out on that, but the dragonborn race came about when the dragons were in power, and they have like what's called the Arcosian Empire. And so dragons believe that they're like the perfect form, so they're helping the dragonborn because they look like them. And then the tieflings, who basically, signed pacts at some point way in the past with devils, and have turned into this thing. They have this empire called Baal Tarath, which is rising kind of at the same point. So these two races collide, in our history, anyways. So they hate each other. And then they had like the two really big empires past, and in their fallout, when those two went to war and like had their big wipeout of both of them, that's when like humans saw their first big growth. Like basically that's when
Okay.
like Rome showed up. The big human empire started in
Right.
the wake of
Right.
all that. And so they are a more rare race, the Dragonborn and Tiefling. They used to be like very plentiful and whatever, but now it's rare to see one.
Right.
It's not like seeing a dark elf, where everybody just loses their mind, but it's something more rare, and they have kind of their own history because I don't I like them, but I don't want an entire country that's 95% Dragonborn. I think they're
Yeah.
more unique and they're way more fun when they have that rarity to them.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I love your idea about the ancient empires of the Dragonborn and the Tieflings fighting each other. That is really cool. Um, I I sort of do a similar thing with the Dragonborn, where in most of my campaign settings where I include Dragonborn, which isn't until recently. Like I was a staunch like no Tieflings, no Dragonborn, no, I don't like them. Not in my campaign. But I've come around on them because I think they have a unique place in the lore and in like the roster, so to speak, of player races. It's I've come around on it, and I'd rather have Dragonborn and Tieflings than another subrace of like elves.
Yeah,
I feel like they're unique enough where they kind of hold their own against the other races. But what I do with Dragonborn is I will usually have them be sort of like you have them where they're in decline. Like they used to be a big deal and they're not so much anymore. They may
yeah,
be going extinct, or they may be, losing their power to, other races. I've had campaign settings where like the dragons aren't around anymore, so the Dragonborn are sort of losing favor and losing prominence. In my campaign setting of Estia, which is my ancient Greece-inspired campaign, I looked at the Minoans, which were the people that lived on the island of Crete in ancient Greece, and they were like really advanced, and they had like running water and stuff like that. So they were kind of like pre-Greek Greeks, and they got wiped out by just a series of unfortunate events. They had a volcano erupt and up like 2 earthquakes within a couple hundred years of each other, and they just got devastated. And so in Estia, I have the island of Zertal, and the Zertalian Dragonborn lived there, and they had just like this badass empire, this great city. They had like really awesome technology. They just were like masters of magic and the elements, and all of a sudden, no one's really sure how. It's sort of like an Atlantis type deal where it's just like earthquake, volcanic eruption, another earthquake, and then a war happened. And there's like not that many of them left, and they all kind of came onto the mainland to escape this island that was just basically collapsing. And so they're kind of just wandering around, like looking for a place to call their own and looking for other Dragonborn. And it's been a few centuries since the decline of their civilization, so they're really sort of kind of running out of time and running out of population. With tieflings, I haven't quite figured out how to do tieflings correctly. I like Kirk's idea about the tiefling empire. I hadn't really given that a lot of thought. So I've always sort of thought of tieflings as like isolated incidents. Like, oops, here's a tiefling. Oops, here's a tiefling. You know what I mean? But I like the idea of like tieflings gathered together and actually having like an empire. That's really, really cool. So
yeah, they're very like. Everybody looks down on them, I guess, the ones that are still around, because they know where they came from. Right. They know that they like worked with like evil, and so that a lot of them, they have their hoods up, trying to cover, what they are. And it's just, I try to play off of what they give you with those races, because so many campaigns and so many DMs just humanize them. Like, that see why people don't like those races, because if they don't have their own thing, why are they there?
Yeah, I think that's true, because it's like, tieflings and Dragonborn do have a little bit, not an advantage, but they have like cool shit they can do. Like Dragonborn can breathe, they have their breath weapon and their resistance to damage, and like tieflings get like, I think in 5th edition they have resistance to fire damage, and they get like a free spell or free cantrip or something like that. And so you have to play up their weaknesses too. Like, it's like, Dragonborn shouldn't just be traipsing around like, I'm off to sell my goods, It should be like, whoa, it's Dragonborn, and like same with tieflings. Like, tieflings look like devils, man. They got horns and like crazy eyes, and some of them have like hooves and tails and stuff. So I mean, people should be kind of like recoiling in terror at them. So I think playing up their weaknesses actually makes them cooler and more unique, because you have to kind of like, play with that. So
yeah, it gives them a reason to be there,
exactly.
Be in the setting.
Exactly. And then as far as gnomes go, man, I love gnomes. Some of my favorite D&D characters have been gnomes. I love tinker gnomes, and I like forest gnomes too. What I do with forest gnomes is, so I have my high elves and I have my wood elves, and then I have my forest gnomes. And forest gnomes are basically like as close to the Feywild as you can get in the material plane. Like, they are the most connected to it. Like, the wood elves are sort of disconnected to it just because they've been on the plane for so long, and high elves are a little bit more lofty. Like, they're like, nah, leave the Feywild behind. We're here now. We're gonna, like, we're setting our mind to the stars here. And so that's where forest gnomes kind of fill that niche, where they're almost like otherworldly. Like, they're very fey looking, and I always play up like the fact that they have really big eyes and like huge ears, and they're almost like kind of primal and animalistic, more so even than wood elves. So that's the kind of the niche that they fill in my campaign world. So
that gives them an actual reason. See, the only forest gnomes I've ever seen are just like, they're these little things that run around the forest. I'm like, well, there's a lot of little crap running around. Like, why do we need them too?
There's stuff everywhere. We don't need forest gnomes. Yeah.
No, I like your idea though.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Cool. And then we got a question here from D20+1. We got about 5 more minutes here, so we'll try to answer a few more. He asks, how do you go about naming countries or kingdoms within newly created worlds? Well, I have a few methods. Kirk, what do you do?
Number one, I used to sweat about that a lot, and I don't anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I just wait until something shows up, and it's usually like a combination of cool words. Like, at this point, I've said this before, but I've got a big notepad like on my phone, like the app, where I've just pages and pages and pages of just random words and notes and things. And so if I'm looking for a city name, I go back to that cool list of words that I've added to for over the last like 2 years, and I just like scroll through it, and I'm like right now, let me find one. Let's see. Names would be like Arethel. I used Arethel. So yeah, I've used most of these.
I used all the good ones.
Yeah. So yeah, I really have at this point. I've kind of cleaned through that list. But yeah, you can't worry about them, because like if you haven't started your game yet, you can always change them.
Yeah,
You know,
it's true.
put sounds like this. I'll come back later and fill in the name
Yeah.
and then do it. So it's hard to go off and like you can go off of like lists of fantasy names or whatever. Some people do that just to get inspiration. But yeah.
I have a similar thing where I keep a running list of cool words that I hear. Like a couple weeks ago at work, I had this document that I was working on, and it had the word hummock in it, and I was like, hummock? What's a hummock? And I looked it up, and it was like a dirt hill. A hummock is a dirt hill. And so I was like, oh, cool. And so in my campaign world, there's a little farming village called Hummock, where it's like, and it just sounds so like almost hobbity, like it's,
Does,
oh,
yeah.
it's Hummock. It's this nice little village,
It's exactly what I do.
Yeah.
Come across cool words, save it for later.
Exactly. And another thing I'll do, and this is like ultimate lazy, but it works, is you take two words that describe the place and slam them together. Like, in my campaign world, we have Stone Rift. It's a canyon that was cut by lightning. So I'm like, okay, it's a canyon, it's rocks, it's a canyon, rift, it's Stone Rift. There, bam, done. It's like Shade Veil. It's a veil in the woods, and it's shady because the trees are big. Bam, Shade Veil, So don't be afraid to do that, too. And that's also a little bit easier for your players to remember, because it's just kind of like,
true.
oh, right. It's
Describes
just nouns.
it, yeah.
It's just nouns and adjectives slammed together, so...
Yeah.
But yeah. Also, Google Translate is your friend. Like, pick a random language and then type in a word that describes the place, and then translate it into a random language, and maybe the word will be cool.
Yeah. That's a good way.
All right. Got time for a couple more questions here. We got one from Jim, the DM. He says, "Hi guys, thanks for doing this. This is awesome. What is your stance on unique monsters? Do you ever use a monster manual creature as the only one of its kind, like the Medusa or the Aboleth? Or do you always bring them in as races of creatures?" That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
The only creature that I've done that with, like, purposefully is the Tarrasque. Just because the thought of there being more than one Tarrasque is terrifying.
Yeah, that's too much.
Yeah. But, that's actually really interesting, because it's like, if you look back at, mythology and stuff, there was one Minotaur and one Medusa, and one thing, So it's, that's kind of interesting. I don't know. What do you think, Kirk?
I'd like to sound really smart and say that I've done that, but I think I just got my newest idea.
There you go. Man, this is why we're doing this, man. Exactly.
Yeah.
We're all working together on this.
I really don't. Other than the Tarrasque, it's the same in one of my games where that exists. Above the others, but it's not like he was the only red dragon,
Right.
So, no, I don't honestly think I've ever done that.
That's really smart. I've never done that either, and I think I'm going to now. So thank you, Jim the DM, for giving both of us a good idea. Okay. All right, we're going to do one more question, guys. If we haven't gotten to your question, I'll try to go through in the next few days and answer them, or we'll save them for the next time we do this. So I'm going to look at the top upvoted question here. We've got one from Daniel Negron, who asks, "Have you guys designed a low magic setting, and what are the challenges you encounter while making one? How do you keep the magic level consistent?" I've never done low magic. Low magic is to me is something like Westeros, where people don't have access to magic really. It's kind of a lost art, and there's not monsters running around all over the place. That doesn't appeal to me as a place I want to play in. Obviously, I love the Game of Thrones books, and I love that setting. I think it's really unique and cool. But for D&D, I need a little bit more magic than that, I think. So what about you, Kirk?
My setting air, that was one that we're playing in right now, started out that way.
Mm,
Not quite as low as like the Westeros, but the way to make it work is magic items, number one, need to be extremely unique and extremely rare. That's like the number one. That has to happen
yeah.
for everything else to work. And then you have to come up with explanations for like character abilities, so that magic's not this super rare thing where there's no magic weapons yet your wizard's shooting fireballs,
Yeah.
every night. You have to come up with just an interesting way to approach that. But as we played more and more, we shifted into more and more magic, just because, like Matt said, that's what we'd rather actually play in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's just it's tough to maintain a low level of magic in a long campaign. You could easily
Exactly.
do a one-off where you're like everyone's playing fighters or everyone's playing barbarians and there's no magic. But yeah, I wouldn't want to do a long campaign of low magic. It would have to be, at lowest, like moderate magic where magic items are really rare, and if you're a wizard, like you're actually like persecuted, like people don't like wizards, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
but okay, guys, so we are out of time. Thank you so much for all the questions. We're definitely going to do this again over on Kirk's channel, and I have an idea for what we could call this world building workshop. What do you think?
That's perfect.
Because we're answering questions, but we're also getting ideas from you guys, obviously.
Yeah,
So
big time.
it's
That
definitely
is awesome.
more of a like a discussion and coming up with ideas together type thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we will let you guys know when we're going to do this again. And Kirk, thank you for joining me again, man. I always
Yep.
enjoy gabbing with you about world building, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Oh yeah, a ton of fun. Thanks to everyone watching too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got 38 people watching, so not bad. All
Nice.
right, cool. So we're gonna go ahead and sign off, guys. Thanks again for watching. Take care and happy gaming all.